Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. My name is Nick, and today, guys, we're going to be jumping down into the world of Bitcoin. Lots of things to think about, lots of things to talk about, so we're going to get right on into it. As I get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, hit the like button. I do appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and stay up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. Just a brief note, in the description, there's a whole host of links, everything from the Patreon services through to the Discord server. Check out any of those if they are of interest to you. Okay, let's get right on into this. Okay, so we're going to start things off by talking about the obvious. That is an emergency meeting with the Federal Reserve. Now, is it an emergency meeting, or is it being played upon just a little bit by some media outlets trying to really spread a little bit of fear? Let's break this down. So it's a closed meeting, or closed board meeting on October the 3rd. Okay, this is 11:30 a.m. on Monday. That is today. This is approximately 4:30 in the afternoon UK time, and you can calculate that out depending on where you are in the world. Okay, so is this unusual? Is this different about things that have gone on in the past? Is this unusual in any way? And no. Basically, what people are jumping up and down about is this little bit just here. Basically, expedited procedures. Now, most of these closed board meetings are labeled this anyway, so this isn't anything unusual. Now, obviously, people are speculating about whether or not the US are going to pivot. What we mean by pivot is, are they going to decrease the rates that they're increasing, right? So obviously we have the rate hikes all the time, once a month. We kind of go through this every single month. Now, there's speculation around that maybe the Fed are going to be talking about doing a pivot and actually decreasing. I think that is incredibly unlikely. You heard this not that long ago, that basically the rates are going to be increasing all the way through to the new year, minimum. They categorically said, or Jerome categorically said, it's going to be X percentage points by January, right? So we kind of know this. So a pivot is very, very unlikely. If anything, they're going to be more likely to be talking about what's going on with other centralized banks and kind of what that might mean for the US, because, they have seen China, for example, selling, US government debt to buy their own currency, because as the USD goes up, or the DXY goes up, obviously other currencies like the Great British Pound, the Euro, the Yen, for example, they are decreasing, right? So obviously what you're going to do is you're going to sell for dollars somewhere to buy your own currency back. There's basically a bit of a loophole here, and you can go into a lot of detail with it. I'm not going to do that in this particular video. It's going to keep it nice and brief and really to Bitcoin's point. But essentially the US have got some concerns. If all the other centralized banks around the world do the same thing that China just did, then potentially the US could be in a really bad position. Those interest rates hikes that you've seen so far could be absolutely nothing compared to what it could be if that were the case. Now, obviously, that's going to take some time to unfold. That's not something that's going to happen. If it is to happen, it's not going to happen instantaneously. It's a slow burn. That being said, it's something that the US should, and the Federal Reserve should be concerned about. Their actions and what they are doing in deflating the value of other foreign currencies is potentially a big issue for the rest of the world, and they're not going to like it. So obviously we're going to see a few things and a few conflicts that are going to emerge over this. Now, over in the UK, we've seen rate hikes, we've seen government bonds being bought and all sorts of different things, right? So every country's going to do things differently, and they're all looking out to protect their own currencies. That's point number one. So is this meeting actually about a pivot, or is this about something totally different that's completely blown out of proportion over these two words that are put on here? I think it has been blown out of proportion, but we don't know for sure. Okay, so it's out there as an emergency meeting that I think it isn't really an emergency meeting. It's just a closed board meeting. Nothing too much to really worry about. So a lot of panic for no reason. And I think a lot of that is just fear for the sake of increasing fear. So on that note, what's the expectation with Bitcoin? Well, we're going to see some fear seep into the space. It's a bit of a given. Considering this news, it's going to be an obvious thing that we're going to see some volatility, right? So let's talk about this. Like I said, join us on Twitch. We've got a link in the description below if you want to know a lot more detail over what is going on. But basically, you know, I'm just going to break this down into kind of simple terms of the stuff that we talked about just on the chart side of things. Okay, so here we can see I've got a few different structures, right? We're breaking this down into Elliott wave theory. We've got 3 waves on a macro. Okay, that's this one just here. Okay, so if I go ahead and actually just kind of remove some of these out of here for a second and just remove that, we see this move here, right? We can see this is a very simple 3-wave structural move, and we'll look to kind of bring this up into this kind of range here, right? $18,000 approximately. Now, there is a theoretical bottom to this. It has to be here unless we have 5 waves up later. Okay, that's also possible. So we shouldn't really come down lower than $18,125. Okay, that would be a theoretical low point, but it does change the structure if we do go lower. It doesn't necessarily invalidate anything, but it does mean that if we do go down lower than this, our structure changes a little bit, and we'd have to kind of consider what that might look like thereafter. Okay, so my expectations are that we're going to see a real small push up. Okay, then I think we're going to see a bit of a drop on the back of this Fed meeting. That's going to probably come somewhere down here around this $18,000 level. And then we're going to see a bit of a recovery and a move up towards $21,000. Now, that might seem crazy, right? As in, why are you choosing these very random numbers? Why do you think there's going to be a small push up and then a big push down, then a bigger push to the upside afterwards, right? Bouncing around a lot there, right? What's the logical thought pattern here? Well, to start with, if I remove all my arrows here, we can talk about structures, right? We have got a 3-wave structured move here, taking us down into these low range. So we can see 3 waves inside our B wave. That's pretty standard, nothing unusual there. We can see that there are 3 waves going up here, okay? And it's possible that we see 3 waves coming down here, hence the B wave bounce, and then a pull to the downside there. Okay, so we can see that. That would also mirror up, let me find this head and shoulder pattern right in here as well. So if we were to find a good anchor point, I'm probably going to take it from here. Go, here's your shoulder, here's your head. Come down some point, probably somewhere around here. Up into a bit of a move up higher, into a B wave shoulder. Let me just pull that back into there, right? So you have this kind of wonky head and shoulder pattern kind of going on. It's quite loose, but it could break us down. So up, then down, that kind of scenario. Again, I don't like patterns, but it kind of gets you the idea of kind of what I'm looking at there. Okay, and then of course our bigger macro is still here in place and it's moving up afterwards, so down before we can go up. Okay, and likewise down, up before we can go down, right? It's pretty standard stuff. Now our stochastic RSI on the hourly is high, okay, but on the 4 hourly it's actually got some room to grow, so we could see some growth before we see a pull to the downside. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm looking at here on this kind of smaller time frame. Now we can go layer in a few additional things. We're going to put some order blocks in, and here you can see our order blocks coming down right on top of this low point here. This is interesting, and it is an interesting area of liquidity. Likewise up here on this area. Now, just to bear in mind, okay, before I put any of those order blocks on, what we want to talk about is why do I think this move up towards 20,800 is likely? Well, as you can see, if I pull this down here, it's very, very close to our 1-to-1 ratio. It's lower than the 1.236 and slightly higher than the 1-to-1. So a slight wick up there takes liquidity. It's an interesting zone. Okay, likewise when I come down on my fibs here, okay, we have this low point here and we have this high point up here. Grab that, move this over to this point, and we throw that on there. We can see down here at 20,000, and it's actually 20,294. Right here is also an interesting zone on the fibs, right? So this is how we draw up our Elliott waves. Then I go ahead and layer these in and we get confirmation of these areas within these blocks. We can see that this low point is actually very close to this liquidity of a buy order. Likewise up here at the top of this move here is a sell order block. So we know that there's buyers here and there's sellers here. Okay, these are actually then aligning with our wave structures. And I did the waves before I put on these blocks, right? So we can see, that the blocks are confirming that my waves are potentially in the correct areas. Then we can go ahead and layer on the HTF liquidity, and we can start to think about, okay, well, where else are people going to be liquidated? And we can see these in here as well, right in this little zone here. We can see that there. That's again this local high point here, right? So a lot of people will put their stop losses on the swing highs or the swing lows. These are obvious areas that you revisit. Now, if these are strong areas of liquidity, you tend to find that this could be a sell order up here, for example, that acts as a double top scenario. Likewise, this buy order down here could be an area where we see basically a double bottom when we move up from it. However, this is very interesting. This local low down here, or this swing low down here, not only is it in the order block, but it's also got a liquidity zone attached to it. So when I take a look at this and I think, okay, well, where are my waves sitting? Are my waves making sense? Yes, the waves make sense. What about the order blocks? The order blocks make sense with the wave counts. And then we layer in the liquidity, and the liquidity is coming up here, right next to our order blocks. Things start to come together quite nicely. Now there's this liquidity right in here, right? This is people who are going to get liquidated from their short positions if the price moves up. So if this price moves up into a B wave, as I expect, this liquidity gets grabbed, then it comes down and grabs all of that liquidity down there, hits this low point, and then moves up, grabs this liquidity. Okay, so we hit this area in the middle, just here, we grab this, okay? We move down, we grab the order block. Okay, we move up, we grab the sell block. Done. Okay, then we talk about next structures. So essentially my idea here is that we move up, then we move down, then we move up. Okay, and that's kind of a real oversimplification of it, but it gives you an idea as to kind of what is going on, how the waves are coming together, where the waves come together with the order blocks, and where those leveraged positions are going to get liquidated as well. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm expecting. So even though we have some kind of emergency meeting with the Fed that's going to happen, I think we're going to move up beforehand, and then during that we move down, and then afterwards, when people realize there's absolutely nothing to worry about, we move up. That's kind of how I look at it. Okay, now I could be wrong, of course. I'm open to the idea that I am. My wave counts appear to be correct as per the liquidity areas, and it would make sense that the price action would move in this particular pattern. But let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Guys, I'm going to leave the video right there. If you found it useful and informative, hit the like button. I do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all the notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. Guys, until the next one.